Loyalty. It's a word we hear all the time in the workplace, right? Companies crave it and employees are kind of expected to have it. It seems so simple, like it's just a good thing, period. But what if it's not? Today, we're going to dive into a couple of fascinating studies that really pull back the curtain on loyalty, and they reveal something that's way more complex and sometimes way more dangerous than it seems.
So that really gets us to the central question we're tackling here. Is loyalty at work a virtue, something we should all strive for? Or can it actually be a vice, a force that leads us down the wrong path? That's the tension we're going to unpack.
All right, first things first. Let's talk about why companies are so obsessed with loyalty in the first place. I mean, for just about any organization out there, having loyal employees is seen as the golden ticket, a seriously valuable asset.
You know, in today's economy, businesses are facing a huge challenge. It is tough to find and keep good people. In a lot of industries, we're seeing these big labor shortages and what feels like a constant revolving door of employees. And that puts a ton of pressure on companies to hold on to the talent they've got.
And this isn't just some small headache for the HR department. We're talking about a massive financial drain. For example, one study on factory workers building mobile devices estimated that the cost of high turnover can run into the hundreds of millions of dollars. So yeah, the stakes are incredibly high.
So when we're throwing this word loyalty around, what are we actually talking about? Well, this definition from one of the studies we're looking at just nails it. It's not about just showing up for your paycheck. It's a deliberate commitment to help your employer succeed, even when it means you have to sacrifice a little something yourself. It's about sticking with them through thick and thin.
Okay, but what happens when you take this kind of old school idea of loyalty and drop it into the super modern gig economy? Well, that's where the story starts to get really interesting, and our neat and tidy understanding gets a whole lot more complicated.
I mean, think about it. We're talking about the precarious workforce here. The work is often temporary, pretty isolating, and you don't get those traditional benefits. So, can you really be loyal to an app on your phone? A really fascinating study decided to find out by interviewing 20 food delivery couriers over in Slovenia.
And you know what's wild? The answer wasn't just a flat no. Some of these couriers actually felt a real human connection. Just listen to this quote. They're talking about kindness, good communication, even having inside jokes with a support operator. That sounds a lot like a positive workplace relationship, doesn't it?
So to figure this out, the researchers broke loyalty down into 3 key tests, and the results were pretty wild. First, a sense of ownership. Do the couriers feel proud of their platform? Yep, check. Second, trust. Did they trust the app and its people to have their back? Another check. But then we get to the third and most important test. Were they willing to stick around for the long haul? And boom. This is the moment where the whole idea of their loyalty just completely unravels.
And this quote right here just says it all. Even though they felt pretty good about the platform, almost all the couriers saw the job as a pit stop, just a transition to something better. So sure, they had this kind of surface-level loyalty, but there was zero deep long-term commitment. It reveals a kind of loyalty that's incredibly fragile. It's purely transactional.
Okay, so we've established that loyalty can be fragile, maybe even a bit of an illusion. But what if it's worse than that? What if loyalty can be actively dangerous? This is where we shift gears. Big time. We're moving away from the gig worker and into the really tough, thorny questions at the heart of the whistleblower's dilemma.
This is a really powerful change in perspective. We're not just asking if loyalty is weak anymore. Now we're asking if the very act of being loyal can sometimes force people to stay quiet when they see something wrong, turning a supposed virtue into an accomplice to harm.
And get this, the data shows that the pressure to just stay silent is immense. In one study, only 9.4% of people who had the chance to blow the whistle on unethical behavior actually did it. A tiny fraction. The overwhelming majority chose silence. So why is that?
Well, the second study we're looking at says it's not just about being afraid of getting fired. At its very core, the decision to speak up or stay quiet is a profound moral conflict, a clash between 2 deeply held and totally competing ethical values.
And that brings us right to the heart of the problem. This whole conflict boils down to a fundamental moral trade-off between loyalty and another powerful value, fairness.
You can see the 2 competing forces right here. On one side, you have loyalty, that powerful instinct to protect your own, right? Your team, your company. And the study found that this value pulls you towards staying silent. But on the other side, you have fairness, this concern for the just treatment of everyone, people outside your immediate circle, like the general public. And that value pulls you towards speaking up.
It is a genuine moral tug-of-war. And the results from this massive study, we're talking more than 42,000 federal employees, were just crystal clear. That concern for others, that sense of fairness, was the single strongest predictor of who would blow the whistle. And its opposite, that concern for the group, loyalty, was a powerful predictor of who would stay silent. In fact, these internal moral compasses were often more influential than outside factors like company policies or even the fear of retaliation.
So where does all this leave us? We've looked at loyalty that's fragile and transactional, and loyalty that can be genuinely dangerous. How do we make sense of that contradiction? To do that, we need a whole new framework for thinking about what loyalty really means in the workplace.
Here's the big takeaway. Loyalty isn't just good or bad in a vacuum. Its moral value depends completely on what or who you are being loyal to. Is it loyalty to a person, a team, or a company? Or is it loyalty to a principle, a mission, a code of ethics?
And this brings us to the stuff that really matters for us. We can now see exactly why the gig workers' loyalty was so shaky. The platforms wanted loyalty to the organization, a purely transactional deal. But they failed to connect the workers to a bigger, shared mission. This shows us that real, sustainable loyalty isn't just about protecting your group. It's about everyone in that group being loyal to the same ethical principles. So for any company out there, the key to fostering positive loyalty is to align the team's goals with a purpose that is bigger than the team itself.
So the next time you hear that word loyalty, whether you're being asked for it or you're asking for it from someone else, just pause for a second. The most important question you can ask isn't if you should be loyal, but rather loyalty to what and to whom? Because the answer, well, it changes everything.